Buenas tardes a todos las personas que estáis siguiendo este oficio tan importante para la parroquia de Salamanca, desde sus casas, desde diferentes lugares del mundo. Hoy tenemos el placer de que nos acompañe el muy reverendo Robert, que muchos de ustedes conocerán por su programa Las tardes en el jardín, donde oraba la oración de la tarde y es sumamente conocido. Vamos a aprovechar para hacerle muchas preguntas y poder conocerle un poquito mejor, conocer sus inquietudes, qué le trae por Salamanca y por qué hemos tenido el privilegio de que hoy esté con todos nosotros. Entonces les dejo esta entrevista en inglés para que ustedes puedan escucharla, puedan meditarla y pueda ser de edificación y bendición para todas sus vidas. Un fuerte saludo del reverendo Rubén Legidos.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Rubén.
Hola. Hello.
Hello. You're going to interview me. Which
I
is
am.
And
hello.
We've never done this before together.
No. So maybe we'll dive straight in.
Yes.
And we'll start with a very easy question. And we could just ask, how did you come to be in Salamanca today?
Well, it's a long story, because when we ceased to be in Canterbury, we had many invitations from people in the garden congregation and their clergy who had been watching us morning by morning, and the invitations came from across the world. But one of the invitations came from Nancy Mead, who is the wife of the rector of St. Thomas Fifth Avenue, as well as in retirement now. And she had always had a long interest in walking the Camino. And so she was very keen to have a place in Santiago de Compostela where pilgrims who were Anglicans, Episcopalians, or really anyone who wanted to spend a comfortable night very near the Basilica at the end of their journey would have a hostel. And she asked us, because we were no longer so busy in Canterbury, whether we would take part in this. And it seemed a lovely thing to do, because pilgrimage is a marvelous thing. It speaks of journeying, and we can talk about that later in our conversation now. But it caused us to go to Santiago and be present in the new Casa Anglicana, the little hotel which has been now bought by the Spanish Episcopal Reformed Church to be a place where pilgrims of our denomination can come. And it was there in the Casa Anglicana that we first encountered Bishop Carlos, who was staying at the time, and Bishop Carlos is the bishop of the Spanish Episcopal Reformed Church. And he mentioned the fact that not only was the Casa Anglicana in Santiago, but also there was a center in Salamanca. And he asked us whether we might, on our way back to Madrid, call in to Salamanca and meet Father Rubin. So that's, in short, why we came here first of all. And I think that's probably enough as an answer to your question.
That is. Thank you very much. And perhaps I could push you a little bit more to ask a little bit more detail about the Casa Anglicana.
Well, Casa Anglicana is now up and running, and many of you as garden congregation people, and it's easy to get on to the YouTube garden congregation by simply typing garden congregation into YouTube and then pressing the subscriber button, which costs nothing at all. And one of the films which will come up, it was put on recently, is the story of how Casa Anglicana, the house of Anglican Episcopal pilgrims, came to be. It actually is right in the middle of the historic part of Santiago. And Santiago, if you've been there, is a city full of pilgrims coming in from the Camino.
Very much like Salamanca.
Very much like Salamanca, indeed. And when we were motoring down to Salamanca, we saw notices of the Camino all the way along the road. and that gave us the feeling that these were pilgrim paths. So the casa is able to give rest at the end of the pilgrimage, and there at breakfast and at supper one meets the pilgrims and you talk with them and hear the stories of their meetings and journeys and their hopes and fears, and they tell you why they began their pilgrimage. And so that is something that anyone can join in with. And I think that we want it to be developed and bigger still, but for the moment it's something which is really wonderful. And the atmosphere there is just beautiful. But let me encourage you to look at that YouTube, which then gives the real picture of what it means to be at the Anglican house, the Casa Anglicana.
And thank you. And can I ask as well, did you know of the Reformed Episcopal Church in Spain beforehand, or is this your first contact with it?
No, we received people from all over the Anglican Communion, as you well know, at Canterbury constantly. And it may be that we would have been praying for it at the Eucharist when turn came round for Anglican dioceses and places to be prayed for. But I had no real connection with it. And Bishop Carlos, and now Father Rubin, makes a real connection and causes us to want to understand its beginnings, which were round about 1868, just before the 1870 First Vatican Council. But here were groups of Christians who wanted to interpret their faith in a different way. And having begun that, they wanted to make connections with friends who were of the same mind. But at first it developed in that way and came through until, in the end, the Archbishop of Dublin in Ireland, who was an English lord and came out here and was very interested in Spain and found groups of Episcopal people wanting a service in their own language at that time, but at the same time didn't want to lose the sense of episcopacy or a proper liturgy, a written liturgy. So they were very, very much like Anglicans, and they became the Spanish Episcopal Church, and that became the infancy of this particular strand. Now, at first, they suffered all kinds of persecutions and difficulties, but as the story went on, in the end, the nearest thing which came very close to what they were wanting was in the tradition of the Anglican Episcopal, if we use the word that the United States word uses for their Anglicans, the nearest thing was that. And so the consecration of bishops took place, and the orders were handed on through a ceremony both with Irish bishops and American Episcopal bishops, and then the recognition of being part of the Anglican Communion in what we call an extra-provincial area, so not part of the Diocese of Europe of the Church of England, but an extra-provincial area with an independence and their own bishop, and Bishop Carlos is that bishop, and he'll be here with us later this evening, and we've got to know him a little bit staying there at the Casa Anglicana, and he also is on the little film about that. So I think we both have begun to learn much more from Carlos and from Father Rubin here about what it means to be part of the Spanish Episcopal Reformed Church, and I hope we'll learn much more. But that's a quick answer to your question.
Thank you. I, having mentioned Father Rubin, I wonder if it might be helpful to discuss a little bit about the mission and the witness of this church and our great friendship with Father Rubin.
Well, let's say, first of all, we got in touch with you from the details given to us by Bishop Carlos, and we arranged to meet at breakfast in the main square, which is one of the most handsome places in the whole of Europe. It's got a quality like St. Mark's Square in Venice, the massive main square in Salamanca. And we arranged to meet at breakfast. We had eaten in the square the night before, and that, I think, was a Saturday night. And it was filled with people until well after midnight. We watched with great joy the people enjoying dinner and supper together in the main square. The next morning, it was very, very quiet when we came to meet you in Café Novelty, I think it's called. So in one corner of the square, there is a cafe. And we didn't know of its significance at first, but it has great significance to us now, because we first met you. And we talked about the ministry here. And you spoke about not only the church, but the centre that you have, which looks after students and takes care of those of an Episcopal Anglican tradition as well. And
students from the extraordinary University of Salamanca.
Indeed. The University of Salamanca, I think, is the fourth oldest university in the whole world. So there's that student feel about the city. But also pilgrims that Father Ruben gives a ministry to people on the Camino who come in. So a similar kind of ministry to what we were wanting to develop in Santiago with Casa Anglicana. So we met and we had breakfast. Then you said, we didn't have a great deal of time because I think we were going from an aeroplane, weren't we, later on from Madrid. But you said, would you like to see the centre or the church? And it was difficult. We could only see one, really. There wasn't much time. And we decided that we thought we would like to see the church. We asked you about it. And I think it was only then that we realized that this enormous link with Thomas Becket, who was murdered in Canterbury Cathedral, of course, was here, and this church, which is the first church ever to have been consecrated in Becket's name as St. Thomas of Canterbury after the canonization of the saint. So I think somewhere around 1174 or 3 or 4, this church was dedicated to Thomas Becket.
I think that's right, yes.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Is that,
thereabouts, yes.
The numbers in my head, thereabouts. And of course that interested us hugely because we'd had 21 years of serving Canterbury Cathedral, where pilgrims came as Chaucer's pilgrims to the shrine of St. Thomas there, where the light still burns. And now we were being told of this church here in Salamanca, which was dedicated to Thomas Becket from all that time ago. So Ruben brought us here, and it was, I think, a good decision because it showed us that here also was a point of pilgrimage. It goes with the Camino coming past, and it also a point of linking with Canterbury in an historic way, which was immensely important. We didn't have long here that morning, but it was a really good visit, and we determined we would come back. And here we are, getting to know you better now.
And there's also the thought that there may be a relic, significant relic of Becket here in a tomb dedicated to him. And on further reading, I think we also found extraordinary royal connections with Becket himself, which date right the way back.
Let's go first, though, to why we were at Café Novelty.
Yes, indeed. Why were we at Café Novelty?
No, I wasn't trying to ask the question for you. I was just going back, thinking, why we were sitting in that place, because it was a very nice cafe to sit in. But you said there was something special attached to it, and I think that what was special was that your predecessor, and he was called Coco Atalano, and was very well known in Salamanca as the pastor to the people of this tradition. This young man was someone who was really not in favour with the government which was coming in and the Spanish Civil War had just begun, and he was, I think, arrested there at Café Novelty and taken away. This was in July 1936, and he was kept without any charge formally in prison until December of that year, when he was, so say, released, but taken away by soldiers and shot in the woods, and no one knows where his burial place is. I hope I've got all that right. But it means that it's not only the sort of Becket martyrdom, which we'll return to in a moment, but this is a modern martyrdom because he was well known as a teacher at Salamanca University. He'd been ordained by the Archbishop of Dublin the year before, and at the same time he was someone who was on the side of a freer nation, and the military side of the operation in Spain could not have him there. He was also supported by the rector of the University of Salamanca.
Who had been an incredibly famous theologian in his own right.
Indeed, and was very well known. And his name was...
Sí, es su amigo de Atilano Coco.
Miguel de Unamuno.
Gracias.
Miguel de Unamuno. And he himself defended Atilano and was put under really house arrest and died in that house arrest just a few days after the death of Atilano. So we're talking about stories of modern scholars standing up for what they believed, and at the same time modern clergy meeting a death rather than deny their faith as they saw it.
Which, when we look around the world today and see what's going on in so many countries, has never been more relevant.
No, absolutely. That becomes also a link with the past, the Becket past, because I think there's a photograph of him, of Atilano, which is something which gives a modern twist to this story. But let's go back to your interesting historic question, which was, I think, about what is left of Becket here.
It was really just the fact that there seems to be an extraordinary connection between the royal family of England at the time of the murder of Becket with the royal family of this region too, a little time afterwards.
Yes, and the Queen of Castile, I think, herself clearly had a Becket connection. We this morning have been to the old convent of Santa Clara, and there we found decorations dating well back, murals on the walls. Now the sign of Thomas Becket in Canterbury, when Henry VIII tried to get rid of all memory of Thomas Becket, Henry II had caused, inadvertently perhaps, his assassination. But after that, hundreds of years later, his shrine was taken away by Henry VIII.
Which in itself, of course, was a sign of absolute power and rather dystopic power, trying to erase the will of the people and a more free society.
Indeed. And we know that although he got rid of all the references to Becket in the liturgy and in the murals on the walls or wherever the Becket sign was around, he didn't notice that the real sign of Becket were three birds, choughs they're called in English, and in Spanish are
Las cholas.
Right, you've got the right word. And we've met them, haven't we, on pilgrimage, and when we were going along the northern pilgrimage,
Fuente
Day, when they stole our lunch. But they're no longer in England, but they were the sign, three choughs were the sign of Becket's presence. And they're rather like crows, and that they have in the Becket chough red beaks and red legs. And in Canterbury, those three chuffs are still the sign of the city of Canterbury. So that I was very proud when I was made a freeman of the city of Canterbury, that I was given the white enamel medal with three chuffs on it to wear around my neck at civic occasions. And it was a sign that the king had not dominated the pitch. People still remembered Becket. But what we found at the convent this morning was that all around the walls there were pictures of various what would you call it, heraldic beasts, and among them 4 or 5 chuffs we found.
Indeed, because Queen Berenguela, or Berengaria as she is known in English, who was the granddaughter of Henry II, had by that time become the Queen of Castile, and had married Alfonso, who was the King of Leon. And she is famous now for having described her lifetime in emblematic form in the convent of Santa Clara.
Yeah. So we had the great privilege this morning of walking around that and seeing the chuffs and noticing that she obviously honoured Becket. And this church of St. Thomas is how many minutes walk from Santa Clara?
As I'm sitting here looking out of the window, the convent is almost opposite.
3 minutes walk away. So that just as in England, there is that respect for the shrine of Becket, so here those chuffs marked her own honouring of St. Thomas of Canterbury with this little church nearby, which would have been here in those days.
And of course you have a very special personal connection to chuffs too, because of the work that was done by Wildwood outside Canterbury, a conservation trust, which is working hard to try to reintroduce the extinct chuffs back into England.
That is so. And on, I think, one New Year's Eve, which is just after the feast of Thomas Becket, we went out to do one of our morning broadcasts, and those of you from the Garden congregation may remember it. When we sat in the enclosure, it was wired in those, they were trying to bring chuffs back and breed them there. And I'm happy to say that that's now happening, and the chuffs are back. They need lots more tending, but it's good to see them.
It is. The first ones, I think, were released this summer, and are now, it's hoped that they might breed in the release sites, and that they may once again be the sign, the sight that we see in the skies flying over us.
Sign of Thomas Becket.
And the sign of Thomas Becket.
Now, let's go on.
I think one thing I would like to know is that, was it a surprise to you that this place was dedicated to Becket?
Well, an enormous surprise. And it's difficult to know. I think there must have been an English connection with the two brothers who saw to the fact that the church itself was probably already standing, but the dedication was then given to Thomas. And that story must have been known, but it was so soon after his canonization and martyrdom that there would have been people everywhere at that time who were not only current in Canterbury, but also were receiving the story across Europe, because Christian Europe was absolutely shocked by the fact that this assassination had taken place. And these two brothers clearly had some connection with that to dedicate this church. But what we found also, of course, when we came inside, is that although some of the murals, well, most of them, were destroyed in the 1755 Lisbon earthquake, which must have been very powerful indeed, and so many thousands of people died, but the effects reached even to here, and the tsunamis across the coast of Portugal and Spain were really shocking and shook the whole of Europe at that time. But some of the murals survived. And the best mural which survives is, we believe, a mural of Thomas Becket himself, which is mitred, and is something that one can come and stand and see and wonder at. You were positing just now the fact that it was quite likely that because of the close connection between Salamanca and Becket, and it was at that time also that the Queen's husband, Alfonso IX, founded Salamanca University. There was much going on here, and that connection becomes a really important one on the way through, and probably a relic would have been sent here and placed here. Whether it's still buried in a vault or something here, we don't know. But
I think it seems extremely likely, and so and
I know you hope it's
I'm
so.
always somebody that's an eternal optimist for a good story. So I think we'll just say that it certainly is. But was there anything else that fascinated you about this church? I'm asking that as a loaded question because I know the position that we're sitting in right now underneath this extraordinary ceiling.
Well, indeed, above us here is an extraordinary vault, and there are 5 symbols in it, and they represent earth, air, fire, and water, the elements. But there's one extra element in it, and it's labelled as ether. But we would think of that as the spiritual breath of God giving us breath as humanity.
We're sounding very intelligent with this, but I have to credit that it's actually Father Ruben that told us about this, and and we completely concur. We agree. So many pilgrims come to Canterbury and also to Santiago. Why do you think pilgrimage is so popular at a time when perhaps attendance at churches is perhaps not so high as it once was?
You're right. We're finding that the pilgrims are burgeoning across every pilgrim route, whether it be the Camino in Spain, or the Chaucer route from London to Canterbury, or the Via Francigena from Canterbury to Rome, which is a very long pilgrimage. I think it's because it expresses something about the quality of journeying in life and meeting new people on the way. So I would think that when we were listening the other morning to the pilgrims having breakfast in Santiago, and they were telling one another about why they had become pilgrims, and some of them would say, well, I don't know really, I just knew I had to do it. And then we spoke to a remarkable lady who said, and she was in her middle age and had come from southern England, and she said, I didn't get tired in the end. It was as if my legs were carrying the strain of the journey and wanting to walk, and that released my mind to think and my spirit to have new depths, and that, she said, I can't explain it more than that. And she wasn't in any way a regular paid-up Christian, but she had found that on the Camino, met many friends. But it was interesting that the lady she was walking with, who was from Holland, said, yes, we didn't walk together. We would meet in the morning and the evening and share our thoughts during the day, but we met many others on the way through. And I think really it's such an image of life and the life of any kind of faith, but it's using the whole of your humanity, body, mind and spirit. And I think that's probably what's the depth of it.
I know that we've touched on that before, and in discussions between ourselves about the idea that that really the main essence of pilgrimage, in whatever form that takes, is actually intention.
Yeah.
And that if we lean upon our Benedictine tradition of Canterbury, where it's a using of, as you've just said, body, mind and spirit in equal balance. Yeah. But I know also that in the past you've been quoted in Time magazine, for example, in saying that doesn't necessarily have to incorporate all three in equal fashion. Could you maybe touch on that? Yes,
and I very much believe that the walking pilgrimage, the journeying pilgrimage, we've set people off on horseback and bicycles and motor bicycles, all sorts of things, yes, all of that, is one kind of pilgrimage. But later in life or in disability, you can be a pilgrim in your armchair if your mind is journeying and going through things and intentional on that kind of exercise. So it can be of body or mind or spirit. And so I think that that's a lovely thing to think, that you can always be a pilgrim, even to the end.
Even if your body is not quite up to doing the physical endurance.
Absolutely. And you can come here without having walked here, or come to Santiago without having walked there. Everything is valid in pilgrimage. It's in the fresh air. And we have to remember that Christians were first called followers of the way. And nothing could be better than that as a description of pilgrimage.
Well, I know that you've got a service to prepare, and we've got some of the members of the congregation who are outside, and we've got fierce rain going on. So
we must let them in.
I think that we sadly must draw this to a close. But I'd like to hand over to Father Ruben to say a last goodbye. But thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Thank you, gracias a todos y nos vemos en un rato para la retransmisión de la celebración eucarística y la predicación del muy reverendo y dean de Canterbury, el reverendo Roger. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias.
we standing, side of the great basilica, in the middle of the busy city, but here, through hundreds of years. And on the wall, a mural, one of those which survived the great earthquake in Lisbon in 1755, the effect of which reached even to here. And it's quite clear that the mural is of Becket himself, the Archbishop who lost his life. The painting which used to hang in Charterhouse, not Charterhouse, the Chapter Room in Canterbury, was of Becket who'd been in exile, coming back. This was just before his martyrdom. Coming back, and the people of Kent thronging to the shores to meet their Archbishop return. Really, he was on their side. And that tragic tale is remembered here by all that is going on in this place. Well, it's a wonderful thing for us to have that, but it's even more wonderful to be able to come to the church and worship and share this time together. St. Paul, writing in the letter to the Ephesians, is writing from prison. How often in that prison cell of Father Catalana, and how he must have thought, will I be released? But if not, I would still be prepared to give my life. So as we think of Catalana and we think of St. Paul in chains, in prison, who eventually were asked to give his life for the Lord that he served. All of that comes to mind in sharp relief across the centuries. There are so many people of faith who in our modern age are asked to give their lives, and much violence in different parts of the world like that. Who will ever forget in Myanmar, Burma, the wonderful figure of the nun kneeling outside a convent, having given shelter to young people fleeing from soldiers, and the soldiers stopping because their little was the nun kneeling with her arms outstretched, like the sign of the cross. It might not save all, but the salvation is well beyond this world. It is actually a proclamation. A life, as the Apostle said in our epistle tonight, lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called. He lists the kinds of gifts which are given by Christ to those who serve his church. And the gifts are very different. But the gifts are particular to you, particular to me. And he lists what we might be. And he could have added many, many, many more things if he lived much, much longer. He could have been an IT technician, allowing the gospel to spread right across the world, or being able to translate that gospel to many languages. It may be a role of leadership, of a kind which is so necessary in the church. But at the same time, he lists the qualities which are the base of that: humility, gentleness, patience, all springing from love. Greater love hath no man than this, than he laid down his life for his friends. And others have other particular gifts. Our gospel, which I find really touching, shows that Mark is the name. Bartimaeus, at the gate of Jericho, blind, and hearing a stir, and the crowds telling him it's Jesus of Nazareth. And he begins to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. They say, shut up, be quiet, you're making a noise, be reverent before the Savior comes. But he calls louder and louder, Jesus, Son of David, have and says, I want to see. I want to receive my sight. And Jesus' answer is wonderful. Receive your sight. Your faith has saved you. And the Bible and then we're told, receive Jesus' morning sight. But the whole message of this particular bit, which is mentioned in all three evangelists, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, is the fact that the only one who is really seeing in that whole crowd is Bartimaeus, who has no physical sight. He is the one who proclaims Jesus, Son of David. Jesus knows that his faith burns bright, he gives him his morning sight, in order that he can follow him on the way, the Camino. For Christians, early Christians, were called followers of the way. And the sight allows you to follow Jesus on the way. It's all we ask. It might be we follow him one way or another. But I believe that it's one pilgrimage has become such a powerful image, and why so many are treading the roots of the other parts of the world as pilgrims. One never knows what becomes a pilgrim. But a pilgrim always has an end in sight. And when we have the privilege of talking to someone, as they sat eating breakfast in the new Casa Anglicana, some of you will be taught on the road here as they walk the Camino, then you realize that they themselves hardly knew why they set off. But they had plenty of answers given to them in friendship, and new gifts discovered, and new possibilities out in the fresh air and the open road as they walked together, following on the way. So thank God for the blindness of Bartimaeus, which was more seeing even than the disciples. But thank God also that Jesus gave him the gift to be able to follow on the way. And we pray that we ourselves may answer that call in our various ways. And as the Apostle says, lead lives worthy of the calling to which we have been called. Thanks be to God for this wonderful place, which has stood here for centuries as a sign of the self-giving of St. Thomas. But thanks be to God for the ability of ordinary people who don't even know the call to find their vocation and follow Jesus out of the way, using the special gifts he has given only to them, for the children of their particular. Amen.
Trataré de hacer un pequeño resumen en español para los que no han escuchado o entendido el servicio. El reverendo Robert nos ha contado por qué estaba aquí. Comenzó su itinerario comunitario en esta iglesia de Santiago de Compostela, donde fue a visitar la casa Anglicana, que es una casa que hemos abierto para darnos la bienvenida a los peregrinos evangélicos y a otros que van a Santiago de Compostela. Es una idea muy buena. Él se va con fecha de aquí y hablando conmigo, pues yo le dije, cuando paséis para el sur, no dejéis de visitar la nueva iglesia que tenemos, que se nos ha donado de Santa Cena, de Canterbury. Y entonces ellos, no sabíamos nada de eso. Entonces, pues vinieron por aquí, se encontraron con el reverendo Domingo, les explicó un poquito de la historia y decidieron venir aquí nuevamente y hacer un vídeo para que la gente supiera que ahora tenemos esta iglesia disponible aquí. Después he saltado a la epístola, a los Efesios, donde nos ha indicado que a nosotros San Pablo nos llama a vivir como hijos de Dios. Luego que veis por ejemplo la oración que habéis sido llamado con toda humildad, mansedumbre, soportando unos a los otros con paciencia y con amor. Y he enfatizado una cosa, cuanta más se enfatice, más necesaria es siempre, que es el amor. Debemos vivir en amor y con amor. Y realmente, yo estaba diciendo que es tan importante vivir en amor, ¿no? Que realmente nos hace cristianos. Ha hecho algo más, pero sobre todo el Evangelio de San Lucas que ha comentado hoy ha sido magnífico, porque primero nos ha hablado de que este pan ocurre en el camino, y en el camino se encuentra Bartimeo Jesús, y clama a Jesús: Jesús, hijo de David, ten misericordia de mí, ten misericordia de mí. Es curioso que Jesús tiene misericordia, pero que muchos que estaban alrededor de Jesús decían que se calle. Muchas veces los que están cerca de alrededor de Jesús pueden ser un instrumento que impida que las personas se acerquen a Jesús. Como estos seguidores de Jesús, que cuando Bartimeo gritaba Jesús, hijo de David, le decían que se calle, que no le moleste al maestro. Pero Jesús dijo: y dijo: ¿qué quieres? Y Jesús le dice unas palabras maravillosas. Dice, puede ser que, Señor, recibe la vida, tu fe te ha salvado. Ambas cosas vienen juntas, la salvación y la fe, como uno de Dios, cuando este hombre recibe la vida. Y lo interesante es que Bartimeo le servía en el camino. Y el doctor Roberto ha dicho que afecta al camino con este otro movimiento que hay del camino de Santiago, enfatizando que puede ser un instrumento para la evangelización, para que las personas se encuentren, para el camino es siempre. A recordar que los primeros cristianos se llamaban los del camino, recordar que así se llama. Así que el camino lo ha utilizado como una cosa positiva, porque nosotros estamos siempre en el camino. Si seguimos la escritura, de las personas se llaman el camino puede ser una cosa muy bonita y puede ser un humano que te encuentres, porque nos encontramos con el Señor en el camino. Y eso es una cosa. Ya lo ha comentado con ellos, el ministerio está haciendo también, que están haciendo un vídeo para promocionar un poquito esto, y también invitarnos a todos a confiar en el Señor y a empezar en nuestro camino. Presentemos al Señor nuestras ofrendas con reverencia y temor santo. Cada uno de nosotros de conforme en su corazón, no con tristeza o con necesidad, porque Dios nos dará. Echad vuestros diezmos en el alfolí, dice el Señor, y hay abundancia en mi casa. Todas las cosas que queréis que los hombres hagan con vosotros, así también hacen vosotros con ellos, porque esto es la ley y los profetas. Y mientras son recogidas las ofrendas, iremos juntos en la página 8 o 9 que dice la tribuna de Rosario. We will say together in faith for nine, the answer of the first of it. Pues sentéis, por favor, y veamos juntos la tribuna. El cartel de tuyas son, oh Señor, todas las cosas en el cielo y en la tierra. Todo el sentido y lo que vive todo lo humano. Gloria y gloria al Hijo y al Espíritu Santo, como siglos de los siglos. December, the Holy Catholic Church of Prayer, so that the Lord may speak to stand in the faith, hope, and charity. Dios Todopoderoso, Padre de nuestro Señor Jesucristo, nosotros confesamos que hemos pecado por pensamiento, por palabras, nos incitamos a arrepentirnos de las pecados y nos revelamos de nuestras y la memoria de nuestras a Señor tu rostro de nuestras gracias y borra todas nuestras iniquidades. Ten misericordia de nosotros. Ten misericordia de nosotros, por el amor de tu niña Madre y por tu cuerpo de la cruz para salvarnos, y perdona todas nuestras faltas, límpianos de toda mala necesidad, llénanos de tus dones espirituales, la finalidad en que vivimos en soledad eterna, mediante Jesucristo nuestro Señor. Amén. Dios nuestro Padre celestial, por su gran amor a los hombres, ha prometido perdonarnos los que con sincero arrepentimiento y verdad se someten a Él. Tenga misericordia de vosotros, perdone todos nuestros pecados, os concede el bien y os conduzca a la vida eterna por Jesucristo nuestro Señor y Redentor. Amén. también yo lo dejo, que os améis los unos a los otros, como yo os he amado. Gloria y honor y al Hijo y al Espíritu Santo, por los siglos de los siglos. Amén. Inclinad vuestros oídos al Señor. Ahora, Señor, Señor, venid a mí todos los que estáis trabajando y cargados, y os haré descansar. De tal manera vamos a nosotros un tiempo, actualmente no se pierda, mas venga una eterna. Elevad vuestros corazones, Dios nuestro Señor, de los grandes de la Padre eterno, Dios nuestro omnipotente, por Jesucristo tu Hijo, Señor nuestro, que da fortaleza de tener y eterna felicidad a los que verdad confiesan. Por tanto, por los ángeles de arcángeles y por la compañía de los cielos, ensalzamos alabándote siempre y diciendo: Santo, 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 Señor Dios de los ejércitos, llenos están los cielos y la tierra de la gloria de tu majestad. Hosana, Hosana en las alturas. Amén. Vamos a cantar cuatro. Verdaderamente es santo y bendito es Dios Padre omnipotente, que empieza en el principio para caer en la naturaleza y morir en la culpa de nuestra creación. Él hizo en sí por ofrecerle el mismo que la pared, un completo, perfecto y suficiente sacrificio, ocasión y satisfacción por los pecados de los niños. Cristo, el Señor eterno, que fue delante de los enfermos como y ha habido las gracias, lo bendijo y lo partió. Y lo dio su espíritu, diciendo: tomad, comed, esto es mi cuerpo, que vosotros os dado, haced esto en mi nombre. Asimismo, tomó el cáliz después de haber cenado, diciendo: este cáliz es el Nuevo Testamento en mi sangre, la cual derramada por vosotros por el mundo para la remisión de pecados. Haced esto cuantas veces lo repitiereis en memoria de mí. Todas las veces que comiereis este pan y bebiereis este cáliz, la muerte del Señor anunciaréis, hasta que venga de los cielos en gloria. Amén.
By doing so, most Holy Father, we who are worthy servants commemorate and announce the death of your only begotten Son, as he commanded us to do, until he returns in glory and majesty. Remembering his glorious passion, resurrection, and ascension into heaven, and giving you most joyful thanks for the innumerable benefits that they provide to us.
Y le suplicamos humildemente, Padre misericordioso, que con su poderosa abundancia dignes, bendecir y santificar para nuestro uso con su palabra, con su Espíritu Santo, estos dones y criaturas tuyas que están vivos, para que los amigos conformes a la senda y instrucción de tu Hijo, nuestro Salvador Jesucristo, en memoria de su pasión y muerte, seamos participantes de su cuerpo y sangre.
And we have this in your Father, graciously accepted our sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving. Humbly asking you to grant that by the merits and death of your Son, Jesus Christ, and through faith in his blood, we and all your church may obtain remission of our sins and all the other benefits of his passion.
Y aquí, Señor, presentamos y te hacemos ofrenda a nosotros mismos, como nuestros cuerpos y nuestras almas, como un sacrificio racional, santísimo para ti, rogando humildemente que todos los que participemos de la Santa Comunión seamos llenos de tu nuestra bendición celestial, porque por nuestros muchos pecados estamos indignos de ofrecerte sacrificio alguno, con todo eso llegamos y acepte desde nuestro y su reino y en el Espíritu Santo, Señor y Dios, de paz y a todos y una sola reconocemos todos los hijos a la Señor de pecado, esperamos y la vida. Hermanos, esta es la reflexión siguiendo el precepto del Señor, de nuestro divino Maestro, que tiene palabras de vida eterna, podemos al Señor con nuestro corazón y con todo el afecto de nuestras almas delante de Él. Padre nuestro que estás en los cielos, santificado sea tu nombre. Venga tu reino. Hágase tu voluntad como en el cielo, así también en la tierra. Haz nuestra de cada día la perdonamos a nuestros deudores, y no nos dejes caer en la tentación. Y continuamos siempre también, así que vamos a seguir por los un día de bendición, confesa nuestras enfermos, toma los pasos y directos de la tierra, levanta la tarde de nuestros enemigos. Oye, por Dios, la súplica de Dios tu siervo, en este tiempo, por nuestro Señor Jesucristo, que contigo vive y reina en la unidad del Espíritu Santo, un solo Dios, siempre, por todos los siglos. Amén.
Hermanos, inclinaos para que
el Señor sea siempre con vosotros. El Señor Jesucristo nos guarde con Cristo y nos bendiga. Protéjanos en su dependencia y nos defienda su libertad de todo el mundo. Y nos siente poco, bienvenido con cerca de todos los pecados. Misericordia, por los siglos de los siglos. Amén. Gustad y ver cuánto es el Señor. Aleluya. Bendecirás, Señor, todos los días. Y horas y el Señor utilizará nuestros tiempos. Los santos para los santos. Todos están preparados. Podéis acercaros a la mesa del Señor. Del Señor, dichoso porque vamos a hacer la vida para todos aquellos que quieren buscar.
Yeah.
el arzobispo Willis KStJ, that is the Archbishop of Canterbury. El arzobispo de Dublín es una persona muy especial y querida para nosotros. Él no está aquí por casualidad, está aquí porque él es el sucesor del arzobispo Blanque, Lord Blanque, que fue arzobispo que llamó mucho a nuestra iglesia y vino mucho aquí a la iglesia en Salamanca, en Valladolid y en Jesús. En los tres lugares confirmó cuando teníamos obispo, nos ayudó a edificar nuestros templos, muchas cosas. Entonces, por esa razón, me gustaría invitar a toda la obispo que diga unas palabras para nosotros. Y yo lo voy a hacer. I said in Spanish that there is a restoration also that the Archbishop of Canterbury is with us, and this I mentioned historically and really I appreciate to have here to say if you can say something. I will tell you to translate with my four kings.
Ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, it is for me a tremendous pleasure to be with you here in this church this evening.
Señoras y señores jóvenes, y es un gran placer para mí estar con ustedes esta tarde.
One of the things about the Anglican world to which we all belong is that it has tremendous similarities and yet specific distinctions.
Una de las cosas que distingue a la comunidad anglicana es que tenemos muchas cosas parecidas y algunas cosas distintas en cada iglesia.
One of the things, of course, is the language, and the other important thing is the people, because the people bring their own dynamism to the response to God's presence in their lives as God invites them to come to church and to worship God.
Una de las cosas que tenemos que diferencia es la lengua, pero otra de las cosas que nos diferencia es el lenguaje. El lenguaje tiene a las personas y cada persona trae a la iglesia su ímpetu, su alegría, su ganas de servir a Dios.
The other thing is that as life plays out its course, history has its impact on our churches.
Igual que la vida tiene impacto en la historia, tiene impacto en nuestras vidas.
And for very specific reasons that will be well known to all of you, there is a particular link between the Church of Ireland, to which I belong, and the Episcopal Church of Spain, to which you and your bishop belong.
Por razones que todos ustedes saben, existen unas razones especiales entre la Iglesia de Irlanda, a la que yo pertenezco, y la Iglesia Episcopal en España, a la que pertenecen ustedes.
In the late 19th century, we found ourselves to be special friends through the work of Lord Plunkett, then Archbishop of Dublin, and it so happens my predecessor.
A finales del siglo XIX, por estas razones, el arzobispo Blanque de Dublín y predecesor estaba aquí para
In no way would I claim to walk in his shoes, but I'm very glad to follow his path.
No puedo reclamar que esté en sus zapatos, pero sí que puedo seguir sus pasos.
Because what he has given to us through his love of your church is a love for your church.
Lo que sí puedo decir es que a través del amor que él tuvo por nuestra iglesia,
That his love of your church has given to us a love for your church.
ese amor que él tuvo por nuestra iglesia nos ha dado a nosotros, a él también amor por nosotros.
Some years back, I had called Bishop Carlos and his counterpart in Portugal to come to visit me in Dublin.
Hace algunos años, el obispo Carlos y el obispo de Portugal vinieron a verme
Our cathedral, which of course is not as big as Robert's Cathedral, but our cathedral of Christchurch was packed with children from our primary schools.
Nuestra catedral, que es nuestra catedral de Roberto, estaba
Where are those two nice bishops who were with you last year?
Al año siguiente, cuando llegaban los niños, pero cuando llegaban los niños, los profesores les dijeron algo. ¿Dónde están esos otros dos obispos que estaban con ustedes el año pasado?
But interestingly, for me this year, when they were both with me then, they were in Dublin on Spanish National Day, and we spent that day in the Spanish Embassy as well as in other places. So it was wonderful to come to Spain this year as part of a formal consultation and to be both in Madrid and in Toledo on Spanish National Day.
En aquella ocasión gastamos el día en la Embajada de España, en la Reverendo también, 12 de octubre, visitamos la Embajada de España, hicimos una recepción, estuvimos juntos en aquella ocasión. Entonces, lo que ha sido curioso es que este año, el 12 de octubre, en el encuentro de la Comunión del Porvo, que estaba aquí, pues estuvimos en Madrid y también en Toledo celebrando este Día Nacional.
Although Porvo is very much concentrated in the Scandinavian and the Baltic Lutheran churches and in the Anglican provinces of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, the bishops of Portugal and of Spain are really important contributors.
So, la Comunión de Porvo está formada por luteranos y anglicanos. Los luteranos de todas las iglesias de Escandinavia, de varias cosas, y las iglesias del Reino Unido y la península ibérica, Inglaterra, Gales, Escocia, Irlanda, España y Portugal. Y él dice que España y Portugal hacen una contribución a esta comunión que tenemos entre veteranos anglicanos y la comunión del pueblo.
And it's for that reason I really wanted to bring the consultation to Madrid and to this diocese.
Por esa razón me gustó traer la consulta que se hace todos los años en estas fechas a Madrid para que participáramos en Madrid.
And the attention to detail and the strength of hospitality of Bishop Carlos and all members of his team of young people was second to none.
La extrema concentración y los detalles adecuados lo dijo Carlos y su equipo realmente nos tocaron a todos.
From Madrid, we both headed out on Friday to go to Santiago de Compostela, and we were making our way back now to Madrid because I fly out in the morning.
Desde a finalizar el encuentro fuimos a Santiago de Compostela, los dos, y al volver, ahora estamos volviendo en nuestro camino a Madrid, porque mañana tiene que tomar el avión de regreso
And that has been a wonderful way for me to live out what Robert was talking about in his sermon, being even in a small way and for a fraction of time, a person on the way with Jesus Christ.
Ha sido para mí muy importante que en este primer vuelta, aunque sea brevemente, hemos sido tocados en el camino.
Yet, no, it was a delightful way of living out what Robert said in his sermon about being a person on the way as a child of Christ. Being on the way as a follower of Jesus. Yesterday, we can relax back soon. Yesterday morning, we were in front of the cathedral, and a number of pilgrims arrived and shouted with joy.
Ayer había utilizado 60 catedral y había cientos de peregrinos que llegaban allá a la paz de la
Completed the dream of a lifetime in walking to Compostela.
Ellos estaban contentos de que habían completado su sueño de llegar andando.
And it gave everybody hope to see people so happy in God.
Daba la esperanza de todo el mundo, ver a gente alegre en este momento confiando en Dios.
And their joy was infectious for everybody gathered.
Su alegría fue infectando a todos los que estaban juntos.
I think your good friend, my good friend, the bishop, I've exhausted. I want to thank him for everything and for bringing me to this church of tremendous generosity and history this evening. When I worked in Oxford, the cult of St. Bridesmaid was the thing in Oxford. In Oxford, the cult of St. Bridesmaid. St. Bridesmaid. Yeah, well, St. Bridesmaid was the patron saint of Oxford.
Oh, sí, la cultura que estaba siendo el patrón de Oxford, la forma de ser y influencia de la cultura de San
There was a point in the city where you began to move towards Canterbury, and there was a church of St. Thomas.
Hay un punto de Oxford en el cual puedes salir hacia Canterbury, que es la iglesia de Santo Tomás de Oxford.
And it's delightful to be here in this church of St. Thomas.
Es maravilloso estar aquí en esta iglesia de Santo Tomás.
And to recognize the carefulness that you show in maintaining this church.
Y es maravilloso ver el cuidado que se tiene de mantener el iglesia.
It is living history and living communion.
Esto es vivir la historia y vivir el camino.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you very much, Bishop. Robert, thank you for your wonderful sermon. And Ruben, thank you for your invitation. And thank you all for your presence.
Gracias al obispo, gracias a Robert, gracias a todos nosotros por venir.
Quiero agradecer nuestra presencia a todo lo que habéis estado, gracias a Susana, a los Estados Unidos.
I would like to thank some of you, but especially Susan, a member of the Soviet Union, outside in the States, just arrived today from the United States, doing business.
Gracias también a los miembros de mis amigos que están listos para ayudarnos.
Thank you, our friends from Rosario, that always are ready to help us with the music.
Y gracias a todos los demás, a mi madre, a mi hermana.
Thank you to the mothers of Almanza and all.
Y quiero terminar con una palabra de agradecimiento a Robert Wilson,
I would like to say thank you to Robert Fletcher.
que es muy especial para mí, la visita que hacéis.
Ha sido un día especial mis anteriores visitas que nos han aquí.
Gracias por querer compartir la visión que tenemos con todo el mundo.
Thank you for today to help us to share our vision of the people.
El camino a veces no es fácil,
The way is not always easy,
pero gracias.
but thank you very much.
Y gracias a Mike,
Gracias a Sergio de Reverendo.
y en especial de la fotografía que es
Thank you to my visitors. That's what we have. Thank you to them also. Vamos a terminar con si bien, diremos las últimas palabras de la liturgia y cantaremos el último himno para celebrar el himno de los libros.
les invitamos después a té y café.
Después habrá el cofre y
rogamos la solemnidad de el nombre de nuestro Señor Jesucristo sea aceptado para nuestras peticiones y alabanzas.
Gracias.